Hello, and welcome to On 1300. I'm Xochitl Mora, and joining us in the MCN studio is a good friend of ours, Mr. Charles Amos, Chairman of the McAllen Public Utility Board of Trustees. Mr. Amos, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here.
We have a really important topic to discuss.
Yes.
It's been a little warm lately in McAllen and the Rio Grande Valley, and there's been a lack of rain. And so obviously we are concerned about the availability of water, the drought. And so we, as the City of McAllen and residents here in our community, want to know how McAllen Public Utility can help us to navigate through these times. And really, we want to know what triggers that drought. What is it at the point where we know it is time to enact these conservation efforts?
Well, the drought, unfortunately, is triggered by Mother Nature. But we're hoping that we can get at some point in time, better communication and adherence to the treaty from Mexico so that we don't have quite the problem that we do. But the lack of rainfall has been something that is, we can all pray about to refill the reservoirs. Currently, they're right at about 19% capacity. And I say capacity, the 19% of the water that's there, or the capacity that's there, belongs to Texas. And whatever's left from that, it belongs to Mexico. Few people realize that about 90% of the water that goes into the Rio Grande downriver from El Paso comes off the mountains of Mexico. So if it rains in Mexico, Monterrey, and back over on the west side of the mountains also, that's very beneficial to the watershed. However, we haven't had an abundance of rain there. We've had some rain here over the last few weeks, which are, thankfully we've had the rain because that lessens our demand on water. But from the standpoint of where we are as a city, we have ample water supply available as long as there is water in the lakes and the rivers. Before the cities are cut off, agriculture will be cut off completely, but that is dependent on contracts that irrigation districts have, the amount of water they have available under their contracts also. So it's going to be everybody pitching in. A lot of cities have utilized 20% as a trigger to go into I'm going to call it a more stringent water conservation regime. We went into stage 2 back in September at 25%. Our stage 3 is triggered at 15. Now, we look at it as an average rather than, well, no, it's 15 today. We want to see what's going to happen and what develops, and then we will implement stage 3.
So currently we're in stage 2. Just
Correct.
to remind our residents and viewers, what does stage 2 conservation mean for the resident, McAllen resident?
Primarily, it institutes watering days. Each resident gets 2 days of the week that they can actually water the lawn. And on those same days, they can wash a car. They can do other things, fill a swimming pool, and a few other things, but it has to be, or at least as per the ordinance, it needs to be, and shall be is the wording that's there, on their watering day. That way we don't have as many, it evens out the demand, so where we don't have the high peak demands that we normally do. That's the primary thing. Car washes, et cetera, are not affected in stage 2. But most car washes today, and to my knowledge, everyone that's operating in the city of McAllen, I'll call it a chain drive, but not the spray wand kinds. They recycle their water. They will take their final rinse water, once they've rinsed off a car, and they will put it into the wash water. And they clean it up, and they reuse it as much as they can, and they have their sand pit and filters that they clean out periodically, but they themselves are recycling as much water as technology will allow them to do. So As far as impact, once again, they don't get really impact until we get into stage 3. And then there are some very stringent limitations on that. I would encourage people that do wash a car under the current regime and in the next one, wash it on the lawn. Use a positive shut-off sprayer. Final rinse, okay, we understand that. But be as conscientious. Don't let the water run down the driveway, down the curb, and into the gutter, because it's wasteful use of the water. Now,
so stage 2 is divided up by the different addresses.
6 different sectors of McAllen.
And so we're at stage 2 currently. Is that a possibility that we might move into stage 3 if MPU continues to monitor the reservoir levels and if there is no rain?
Correct. We will continue to monitor those water levels. If we get down to 15%, we will advise the public of what the necessary ordinance requirements are. They are available, I believe, on our website. If not, I'll make sure that they are after the program. But the main thing is that it just gets more stringent, and then we start imposing surcharges. For those people that use an excessive amount of water, be it in their home, be it water in their yard, right. Businesses, the same thing, we start implementing a surcharge, and it varies depending on the application and who's using it, but it gets very costly when we start doing that. And we hate having to do that. It's not something that makes us money, but it encourages a very wise use of the waters that we have.
Well, water is a very precious resource, and so it's always a good idea to conserve it, even in the little ways.
Certainly.
You turn off the water when you're brushing your teeth and all these other little things. So
shaving.
When we have shaving, exactly, all of these other little chores that we might have around the house. So certainly we're in stage 2. We want to make sure people continue to follow that and be aware of what stage 3 could look like if the reservoir were to continue to decrease in levels. But is there anything else that MPU is doing to help with conservation efforts here for our community?
Well, we are also implementing that, on our own efforts with the city and Parks and Rec in particular, encouraging them to audit their sprinkler systems, et cetera, to where we're not in wasteful use. We do have one of our larger parks that is reuse or reclaimed water. And of course, Tres Lagos, they're not going to be impacted by any of the residential applications we're talking about, because all of their lawn care is with reclaimed water. So they're going to be the lucky few. I'm going to call it our backbone, our supply piping for widespread reuse is not quite in place because it's costly, and we are trying to develop that as time progresses, and we will be developing it even more. The other thing that we are definitely looking at is groundwater desal. Now, currently at the South Plant we have one well, groundwater well, that we mix with the water that we get from the river at the water plant. And it's higher salt content, but when you mix it, it doesn't take the levels up to, I'm going to call it a poor tasting quality of water. But we are looking at the North Water Treatment Facility, the construction of to start with, a 5 million gallon a day desal, groundwater desal plant. Now, we've done previous studies that indicate that this is one of the less costly expansions of our water, our water diversity. And this is the only thing that we have available to us to augment, would be the first step. The water's free. but the electricity to produce it is very costly. Unlike surface water, river water, it's very easy to get the water, but with groundwater desal, you have to drill wells to do it, and then the process is more expensive to maintain and operate. But we're looking also at one other thing, just like we did at the South Plant, the possibility of mixing to augment some of the supply. Currently, McAllen residents use an average of 23 million gallons of water a day. And that does include, and this is not in the depth of summer, but the overall yearly average, which does include water that we sell on wholesale to other communities around us. Because those communities don't have the resources, and we are trying to help our sister cities, but also covering the cost to do so. So it's not having an impact on our rates to our residents. But the most important thing that we can do is remember that anything that we can do to save that gallon. If the toilet's leaking, if your faucet's dripping, change out the faucet. Get a gasket for that faucet. Outside faucets often leak. There are all kinds of ways you can save, and you'd be surprised at how much water you are not using but throwing away.
Well, one way that now residents can monitor that is with the newly automated meters that are being currently being installed in homes across McAllen. I know that it's still in the process, and we still have about a year left on that project to make sure all homes are do have that newly automated meter. I think my home was just updated, which is really great because now I see the bill and I can see where the water use is. And that's something that once they have that automated meter, then your McAllen MPU clients will be able to really see the customers will be able to see their water use and see where they can cut back.
Correct. And there will be implemented or available a portal where the customer can actually go in and see their, I'm going to call it real-time use, although it is a delayed reading. Sure. The meters are read a number of times a day. I don't know exactly what the sequence is, but it can be modified and adjusted. But at least they'll be able to see, okay, on Monday, how did I use so much water? Well, they forgot that they turned on the valve on their swimming pool, or it was the sprinkler day. Whatever those uses may be. And if it's something out of the ordinary, then they can determine if there was a leak or not more easily. And in the bigger picture, once we get in an area metered, we can see what the total consumption is. And if our piping sizes and pressures say that there's more water out there or that's being delivered than should be, it gives us an opportunity to go in and see where we might have a problem, where we may have a leak or something like that in our system. So the overall thing is going to give us a bigger picture of what is happening throughout the city and what those demand levels can be. And included in that, we are going to be looking at monitoring the levels of our water towers a little bit more closely, what the demand is on those, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to give us a tool that will not only help the resident, but it will help us manage the quality of water better also.
Well, MPU has been very proactive in managing this precious resource for us with all of these different projects. You've mentioned an element that was a landmark here in McAllen, the Bowie Reservoir, was recently drained. Tell us why that is so important in this overall water diversity of MPU and for McAllen residents.
Well, everybody knows Bowie Reservoir to be the reservoir that's by the airport, near the mall and 23rd Street and the expressway. And we've now terminated, I'm not going to say terminated, but we have now started calling it Old Bowie, because about 5 years ago we constructed what we call New Bowie Reservoir, which is south of the airport. It's still served by irrigation districts number 2 and number 3. They'll provide water there, raw water there, and we pipe it to the plant on the south side. But New Bowie is almost almost 3 times the size of Old Bowie. Old Bowie's maybe, when it was first built, it was a week or 2 of water. Now it's a day and a half of water. So its usefulness has declined over the years, and the city is looking at a redevelopment possibility at that location. You don't find what I think is about 40 acres of land in one spot in Center City, if you would. And they're looking at different possibilities, and we'll see what the future may hold from there. But New Bowie is already in place. It's been online for 5 years. And I think if I can get real quick here, it has a capacity of 300 million gallons of water, whereas Old Bowie was right close to 150 to 180,000. And that combined with the progression of AMI, the development there will be of benefit to the tax base for the city of McAllen. We won't see any benefit from the taxes that are inclined, but we'll have new customers that we'll be selling water to. And keeping that in mind, there are other ways that we are looking at, technologies, et cetera, that we're looking at on a continuing basis to make our operation more efficient. I told you earlier that we averaged about 22, 23 million gallons of water a day. Last summer, I think we peaked at about 37 million gallons of water. But we have the water rights and the capacity to provide 62 million gallons of water a day. So we have ample water supply and capacity to provide for our citizens. But if we don't have to use all of the water rights, then we're saving water for the future. Right. That's why reuse, that's why technologies, that's why the new reservoirs, and then groundwater desal. All of those combinations play together that over the years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the future, it's going to be ensuring water supply for our citizens. And that plant, the desal plant, can be expandable, or at least that's our proposed design, to 20 million gallons a day, which at that point, when you look at it, that's about what we use in a day. So if something happens on the river or one of the irrigation districts can't supply water, we'll still have this redundancy available to us to provide water for the citizens of McAllen.
So today for residents, we do want to remind them that we are still currently in stage 2, and of course MPU is monitoring the reservoir levels to see if we might have to go into stage 3. But even still, we just encourage that voluntary conservation of water in any way that the household resident can do to save our resource here.
That is correct. I mean, and once again, you mentioned brushing your teeth. I said shaving, rinsing water, rather than rinsing dishes under a running faucet, okay, fill the basin up and rinse your dishes that way. Dishwashers are efficient too if you have them. But there are many ways that you can conserve water, but primarily it's the wise use of it. And we have ample supply at this point in time, barring any more extreme catastrophe, which historically has not been the case. But yes, we'd love to see more rain in the watershed.
Yes, we would. Well, Mr. Amos, we always appreciate when you come into our studio. You always have such great information. And of course, so many of our residents here appreciate that so that they can be better stewards, as we all are, especially MPU, of our water. So is there anything else, another message you would like to give before we sign off?
We have, we keep looking at every aspect of it and planning not just for tomorrow, but for 5, 10, 15, even 20 years out. As our city grows, we've got to be prepared to serve the new citizens without it being a burden on the existing citizens. And so that's why we've implemented some of the things that we already have in place as far as development, et cetera. McAllen's going to continue to grow. It is a city that I'm born and raised here, so it's someplace that I've kind of have roots that are hard to get rid of. But I look forward to continuing to be a good steward to the citizens. I know that the board that we have is a very proactive board. Everyone's very involved in the educational aspect of what we need for the future. So we've got a good board in place. We've got plans in place to conserve water. We're going to ask the citizens to work with us, and we'll continue to work hard for them.
We appreciate. Thank you so much, Mr. Amos, for joining us this afternoon. And for all of our residents here, continue to watch MCN and follow the City of McAllen on social media for the latest regarding MPU, Stage 2, and any other information and news from the City of McAllen. For the City of McAllen, I'm Xochitl Mora.